I was thinking how, I've had some, believe me, I've hit rock bottom a few times in my life, harder than most people. But yet I've done extreme things on the other end that most people would just dream about. Whether it was like filming DJs the last 15 years or just being healthy, having some enough money to not have to worry about it. But even like the 2, 3 years I drove limo out of Beverly Hills in the mid 80s, that was some of the funnest times I ever had. I mean, I was like, I guess like 25, maybe 26, 27 or something. I'm making about 50 grand a year, half of it cash, half of it on a check. I'm paying like $219 for my car and like $325 or $375 for my studio apartment. I ride on right on Fairfax and Wilshire Boulevard across from on the border of Beverly Hills. So it's like I'm literally, guys would tip me $100 and shit. I mean, we were making money, man. I remember I had a shoebox that I just put $100 bills in. You know how these strippers just put money in? I would just do that. And I remember one time I just decided I'm going to count that. I had like, I think like 55 $100 bills in there. Because I was just putting hundreds in there. 50 or less I just keep on me. But hundreds, guys would tip me 100. Now, who did I drive that I can recall offhand? Like, who were like my best clients? Pat Bowlen. He passed away. He was the only. When I started driving Pat, he had just bought the Denver Broncos, like within the year or two prior to that. So I drove Pat. He would come out here twice a year when the Raiders were out here and the Broncos were playing. And I drove Pat. He would come out here. Pat would come out here. I can say this because he's deceased. Okay, I was like, his name was Pat Bowlen. Bowen. B-O-W-N, Bowen. Just look it up, Pat Bowen. Or was it Bowlen? B-O-W-L-E-N. One of those. Bowen, I think. Anyway, Pat, nicest guy in the world. I want to say at the time he was probably, if I was 27, I want to say he was about 45 maybe. Like maybe 18 years older than me. I could be wrong. Like if I was born in 58, this dude was probably born in 1940, but I could be off. But Pat would come out here. He made his money. His family and dad made money in the lumber industry or something. They bought up, literally, this family owned, like outside of Denver. This is no bullshit. This dude's dad had like a forest of he had wood that he was selling off or something, a tree farm. I don't know the whole history, but it was something like 5 miles by 5 miles this guy owned. I know it's real estate. This guy basically owned 25 square miles of a forest outside Denver. And so Pat was into that, into real estate, and he bought the Broncos. So Pat was my fave, or one of my regulars, because he would come to L.A. He was in L.A. 6 times a year. Like every other month he'd come into town, and he'd stay for 2, 3, 4 days. And I remember one time I couldn't drive. I was sick. And they go, do you want someone else to drive you? And I swear to God, to LAX you want to go. He goes, no, I'll just take a cab because I only want like Carrie to drive me or something. Like it was weird. And I remember Johnny, the manager, told me that. He goes, yeah, you were sick. He goes, Pat had to take, it took a taxi. I go, why didn't he take like a car? We had other drivers. He goes, he just felt like he wanted to use somebody neutral. He didn't want like. Plus, there was this. We had this one so-called Christian dude that was like a snake and would try to steal customers from me because I was there from the beginning when Johnny first became manager, and Johnny and I knew this guy. We had a mutual friend in common, so Johnny gave me the best job. So I was making lots of money. Can you imagine? It's like 1984, 85, 86. I'm making like 50 G a year. Yep. Wait, is that the? I'm making 50 G a year. Is that the cute chick that walks her dog near me all the time? Is that another cute? See now, we're starting to get women in their 40s and 50s walking their dogs in the evening that are, there's some single. Believe me, I got a. Wait, trust me. There's a lot of single JJ where I live. That's like 45, 50. That's decent looking. I'm telling you. And since I live right where they walk their dogs, I could chat them up. Or they'll just chat me up. They see I live right here. No, Pat was my fave. So I drove him for, let's say, 3 years. And when I would take him to the Coliseum, I could say this, he's deceased. When I took Pat to the Coliseum, because we're going to make this a tribute to Pat, nobody else. Because Pat was just a cool dude. So when I first started taking Pat to the games, he would give me a visitor owner pass. No, he would give me a seat that was like on the 50-yard line halfway up. Like just a seat, and it was just like box seats or something. So it was like the first year, because usually for some reason they would play them a lot, like usually twice in. For some reason, it would be the Raiders would play them once in Denver, and these guys would play them twice in LA, it seemed. But anyway, because it seemed like I was going to at least 2 games a year at the Coliseum. So Pat would give me a ticket around the 50. That was the first year. Then I got to know him. Year 2 and 3, he basically gave me what's called a visiting owner's pass. He goes, here, Kerry. Because I got to know Pat. Oh, and Pat would always give me $100. Just always. So he'd give me a visiting owner's pass to get, Now, what's a visiting owner's pass? Basically, I don't really have a seat. Oh, I do have a seat. But it's not in the stand. It's in the press box. At the time, the Coliseum didn't have separate suites like all these stadiums do now because it's an old piece of, built for the Olympics in 34. So there's 2 press boxes, and the one like on the south side, you've got, it's 2-story. Down below, you have like the broadcasters who are broadcasting the game, and then up above, you've got like the visiting owners suite, and next to that, they, have the assistant coaches watching from down. The assistant coaches are watching the game from up above because obviously they get a better angle from up above, and then they can see which plays and adjust. So there's like usually 2 or 3 assistant dudes in that room. So I would either go into that room. This is no bullshit. Or I would go into the room where Pat was with just him and his girlfriend and nobody else. It's just me, Pat, and his girlfriend because I knew these people. Okay? And he just let me sit there, but I would roam around. I didn't want to sit there the whole time. I'd be with him for like a quarter, and we'd be talking. Like he just like, I'm telling you, he goes, he goes, Kerry, what do you think of the game and stuff? He was asking me, I swear at one point, this is no exaggeration, like he was thinking about getting rid of one of the coaches or something, and he asked me what I thought about that. And he was thinking about getting rid of John Elway or something. And he goes, what do you think? I'm telling you, this is honest to God truth. I knew Pat so well. Because keep in mind, I'm driving this guy like usually 6, 7 times a year. No, about 6 times a year, but he's out here for a week. So I could be driving him every day. I mean, literally, figure it out. 6 times 7, that's 4. I'm with this dude 42 days out of the year. Because he didn't have a house out here. He was in Denver. But I'm telling you, I was with this guy a lot. So I got to know him. And guess what? I can say this. Pat was a big weed smoker. Oh, yes. When I first started driving Pat, he would put the divider up in the stretch limo. Oh, yeah. We'd get to the Coliseum, and the divider would be up, okay? And I could smell the fucking weed. Just like, and I'm thinking to myself, perfect, now I could get high. Like if I'm stoned, not right in the car, though I did do that. I'll have to tell you another story when I've got other stories about that, but this is a good limo story. So I'm driving, we're parking, and he's smoking out and back. And, eventually it got to a point where by the second year, Pat just had the thing down. Wait, here's how it worked. The first year, Pat had the divider up, and he was smoking back, but I could smell it coming through. That's just not like, it's not smell proof. And he had all the windows up and the air on and shit. And you could smell it, man. It reeked. And I'm thinking, perfect. So if I get stoned and he smells it on me, he's not going to be that pissed. It's just whatever. Or I could smoke in the car. And if the car smells like weed, he's not going to know. He's going to think. But anyway, so that was the first year. Second year, Pat's smoking in the back with his girlfriend. And he would smoke joints too and shit. But he was neat and stuff. And the divider would be down. He goes, you don't mind, Carrie? I go, no. He goes, do what you want, I go, it's just cigarette smoke I don't like. I'm allergic to that. But weed, no problem, And then by the third year, he and I are sharing joints together. Literally. He's smoking. I'm literally, I shouldn't even be saying this. I wasn't driving while he would be passing a joint, but we would park somewhere and he'd light up a joint and he passed it to me and I'd get stoned because he just knew that you could drive. He was a stoner himself, this dude. So he knew that you could drive on weed, and he knew that as limo drivers, we never touched booze. That was like the ultra sin of sins. So we either smoked weed, and obviously all of us, I can't think of an exception except one or two people, all of us had to do the nose candy. And if you didn't do that, you pumped yourself with coffee. Yes, we had to do the Coke. We would call it vitamins. We did. Yep. But we were getting the good shit. Yeah, we had to do that. When you're working, when you go to work at like 10 a.m. and you're working till sometimes 24 hours, like on a Friday, Saturday, literally you'd be getting off at 10 a.m. in the morning. You need blow to keep it. I'm not going to lie to you folks. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's either you do a little nose candy, that's what we call it, or else you risk getting in a fucking accident. And on nose candy, you can drive. In fact, on nose candy, if you do too much, you're paranoid. So you're going through a green light. I remember one time I did too much. I was paranoid. I'm going through every green light I would drive through. It was like 2 a.m. And that's when the drunks are out, on a Friday, Saturday. So I would have the brake. I would like ride the brake and slow down and like almost stop in the middle of the intersection on a green light. The guys in back probably knew I was fucking paranoid or something. Nobody said anything, but it was just, I remember I said, well, there were guys that I fucking knew. There were dealers I drove that would fucking have it on them and shit. I drove one guy who was a big dealer. But yeah, Pat and I would share joints, smoke and shit. He was a cool dude. Every time I drove him, every day, $100. So if I drove him 7 days in a row, $700 from the dude. And this was in 1985, 86, folks. Oh, yeah. Well, that's my Pat Bowlen story.